firing Robert Saleh was a mistake for the Jets that they're going to regret. Am I overreacting, or is this a perfect reaction for what just happened today?
I'm going to tell you this, Hunter. I think because I don't know where you're going with this, but I think I'm going to agree with where you're going with it. But with that being said, from my perspective, I do think Salah had to go either way. I think I've been kind of echoing this tune for a while, but I think I see where you're going with this, and I'm intrigued. So enlighten me.
Okay, so let me get the stats out of the way, and then I'll provide kind of my standpoint on the situation. So right now, these are the quarterbacks who have started under Robert Saleh and the amount of starts. They had Zach Wilson for 33 games, Mike White for 7, Joe Flacco for 5, Tim Boyle for 2, Trevor Siemian for 3, and Aaron Rodgers for 6. Okay. If you ask me, you're dealt a pretty bad hand. Zach Wilson, we know what he's been. So in the last 3 years, Saleh's defense has been top 4 in yards allowed, which means they've allowed the 4th least amount of yards at worst in the last 3 years. In the last 3 years, they have been 4th, 12th, and 3rd in points allowed, which means they have allowed the least, that's top 12 in least amount of points scored in the last 3 years. And then the other tidbit that I want to add is the DC, Jeff Ulbrich, who is now the interim head coach, has no head coaching experience. And the other guy in the room is Nathaniel Hackett, who we know what his tenure in Denver was like. So the Jets right now, are they better with Robert Saleh? They were 20-36 since 2021. And GM Joe Douglas is 29-59 since 2019. Neither have a playoff appearance. In my opinion, Saleh, was he the right guy going forward long term? No. But if you had this short of a leash on him, why would you go into the year with him? Especially knowing that Aaron Rodgers is getting older, and if this year doesn't go well, why would he stay around? Why would he stay around? Is this intriguing to Devontae Adams? My whole thing is, okay, Robert Saleh is not the long-term answer, but firing him in the middle of the season, does that make you a better team to try and win a Super Bowl on the short leash that you have with Aaron Rodgers? I don't think Robert Saleh was the right coach long-term, but to fire him 5 weeks into the season when you know it's Super Bowl or bust, and do you really think an interim head coach and Nathaniel Hackett are going to lead you to a bowl? I just don't understand.
You know what, Hunter? When you lay it out like that, though, I do completely understand where you're coming from. I think I'll rebuttal with this, though, because before I get into agreeing with all your points, because I do, and we're going to touch on the points and kind of, go from there. I think it's such a double-edged sword, though, because here's the problem. We could already hear about how the Rodgers and Quincy Williams and other leaders of the team were talking about Saleh, perhaps not even in the most direct sense, but we knew it was directed towards him, right? And I think the thing with that is, when you start to lose the locker room, well, you certainly have no chance to go win a Super Bowl from that sense. But to your point about the guys not having the right coaching experience, right? Yeah, to the point of one of them doesn't, and then we know about Hackett. Geez Louise. I think that it's just a double-edged sword, though, because it's like, yeah, you're not confident in that, in Ulbrich, but I feel like you're pretty certain in Saleh, where it's like, yeah, if we keep going in this direction, not only are we going to lose the locker room, but to your point, look, what incentive would Rodgers have to come back next year, even if things don't go well this year? Well, at least maybe if they can somehow kind of turn it around and light a fire under themselves and start playing some hard, good, competent football. Because to your point, look, I was saying this before, and, Jets fans were kind of on my case where I said this might be the last run. People are kind of like, maybe a couple years. I don't know. The man already checked out of almost the entire offseason program to go on vacations, et cetera, et cetera. I think that kind of speaks to the level of commitment at this point. And again, not that he's not a legendary player, he's not the Hall of Famer that he is, because we know Aaron Rodgers, and I'm not trying to take anything away from him. What I am trying to say, in the simplest sense here, Hunter, is the Jet situation is kind of fucked. I don't really think there's I don't really know if there's another way to say it besides it's such a hodgepodge of multiple elements. That how do you put it into one thing? You really don't.
It's kind of similar, I would say, to and not in the same level of seriousness, because we know the Raiders aren't competing for a Super Bowl, but it's kind of one of those things where it's like, if you know this guy's not the guy long term, what's the point in letting him do another lame duck season? the reality is Aaron Rodgers is going to be with the Jets this year and potentially next year. And depending on how dominant and good they are, maybe he stays around if you win a Super Bowl. But if you know going into this year that, like I said, this leash is this small, Bill Belichick was sitting right there. He was sitting right there. Right there. And I know it wants to be Aaron Rodgers' offense, and maybe Belichick would have been open to that. But and I know there was the shit where he was with the Jets and he resigned and went to the Patriots, all that. But it's just mind-numbing. And I was listening to the Rich Eisen show today, and this is kind of what I'll cap it out at, is Woody Johnson apparently was like, I think the ambassador or something for England or whatever. And basically got a lot of connections over there. And I guess he was getting, kind of laughed at over there in England during the game. And can't bode well for a head coach who hasn't won. And I know his defense has been really good, but I also think the hirings, it's a big thing with like who you hire. Like that is your job, right? I think Ulbrich has been good, but he hasn't gotten the offense right. I mean, it's been under Zach Wilson. Rodgers has always been there. But another thing is if Rodgers had influence on this decision, you're literally banking decisions on a quarterback that may not be here after this year. Like you traded assets for him. You're probably going to trade more assets for Devontae Adams. It is just it's a situation going nowhere fast.
Well, no, everything you just said, and look, I want to just point this out as well, because I was talking to a friend about this morning, as well, and I think this is something that kind of has been perhaps glazed over, but not by Jets fans. I know Jets fans are going to be echoing the same sentiment. Look, at this point, if you're Woody Johnson, you got to start looking in the mirror yourself, man. Like, what is Woody Johnson's track record of decision making? It's terrible. I mean, so what am I trying to say at this point, right? What I'm trying to say is top down, Hunter. Top down. There's a point where when the man at the top can't make the decisions, the recipe is going to be fucked. Where it's just the word of the day for the Jets. I'm sorry. I don't mean to be, I hate to bring it out if I don't have to, but the Jets situation as of right now, barring that Ulbrich is the absolute answer and he can light a fire underneath every single one of them. Because here's the thing too, with his personality and with what he's done to the defense, I'm not going to sit here and pretend like there's not a chance. There is a chance. So it's not like you're in absolute bleak land. You're not. But if that's not the case,
no, you're in bleak land. We knew. We called them frauds. We called them frauds earlier this year.
If you think Aaron Rodgers is going to come back after, and this is the thing too, look, let's just call it for what it is. And Aaron Rodgers, he would agree with this. It's a fact. He is clearly in a much different headspace now than he was 5 or 10 years ago. He has, whether you want to call it matured, changed, whatever you want to call it, he's in a different headspace, right? He is. He's much more focused on, I don't want to say much more. He's a lot more focused on the things outside of football. And that is very clear from the decision making that he has made over the last, 2 years, year and a half. And that's fine. I'm not trying to sit here and say like, that's the point. I'm not trying to make this about Aaron Rodgers. I'm not trying to sit here and rail on Rodgers because I'm not, right? Aaron Rodgers is a legend of our game. And that's the bottom line. But the other bottom line along with that is like right now he hasn't been helping the situation and he's part of the ingredients that are making this a mess. And that's objectively a fact at this point. We just look at the tenure of Rodgers on the Jets, and yes, the injury he had no control over, but everything else outside of that, it's been a mess. It has been an absolute mess.
Yeah, it's been less than ideal in New York. I remember when the trade happened, everyone was super hyped, but thank you guys so much for watching. If you don't know ball, want to know ball, be sure to subscribe. Let us know in the comments if you think firing Robert Saleh was the right move.